First of all, thank you, IMI, for inviting me to speak at this event, and pleasure to speak with all of you. Let me be a bit honest, I wasn't expecting this kind of a setup. What we have today, or what I have to present today, is a pretty heavy-duty topic. Very real estate, very domain-specific. How many people here are interested in real estate? Oh, you are? Okay. So then what I'll do is I'll run through my slides a little more quickly, and we'll keep some extra time for Q&A at the very end, if that's okay. So I have a fair bit of slides, so bear with me as we run through this quickly. Start with a personal introduction. I come from Goa, born and brought up there, and the only reason I mention Goa is because I find so few people from Goa. It's good to know if somebody else is from there too. Early 10 years in the corporate life in the companies that you see mentioned here, and since 2011, I've been building and running Magicbricks, right? So everything good and the not so good things that you find about Magicbricks, well, the buck stops right here. For those of you who want to connect with me, you'll find my contact details here on the left. And in case you wish to speak to me for anything outside of work, my interests typically outside of work are what you find mentioned here. I dabble in chess. I belong to a very dwindling group of philatelists. I don't know if there's anyone here in this audience. Moving on, I don't think Magicbricks requires too much of an introduction. I hope all of you know what Magicbricks does. I hope all of you at some point of time have used Magicbricks. Nonetheless, very quickly, we are a leading search and discovery platform of the country. And as a leading property marketplace, one of the things that we do is to bring all the stakeholders of the industry together. Right? So here are some of our statistics. At any point of time, we have 1 million people looking for homes who visit the site. At any point of time, we have 1.5 million property listings put up by owners, brokers, builders. We work with more than 20,000 brokers and more than 2,000 developers every single year. But while this part of Magicbricks most of you would know, what far fewer people would know is that we've pivoted since then to a full stack model. Right? So we do a lot more than search and discovery. And this is in the formative phases, right? So some of these services are in 2 cities, some of them are in 4 cities. We'll speak more of this as we go along. So we've got ourselves into home loans distribution. We've got ourselves into home interiors. We do a bunch of property services. We're also into property site visits. And we'll speak more of this as I go along. Now, this is the topic for the day. And for those of you who raised your hands on real estate, what we'll speak a bit on today is what will it take, right, to improve home ownership by leveraging the entire digital ecosystem. What I plan to cover is a bit of the context of what the category looks like, what are the key trigger points in the category, what are the pain areas, and what are the various frictions and the roadblocks that one needs to eliminate if you have to empower home ownership, right? Now, let me start from the very beginning, right? Our category and our industry is not one of those aspirational or discretionary spends. We are in the roti, kapda, and makan business, right? So absolutely basic, first level Maslow's law. The category has existed right from the times humanity came into existence. What you see on the left is a caveman's house. I wish I found a better picture, but that's what I could find in the morning while I put the deck together. And what you see on the right is probably going to be one of the first habitations on Mars, right? And irrespective of whether it was the early humans or the humans in the future, everyone is going to need a house. So very basic human need, something that everybody aspires for. But in today's times, it's not just a home which is a shelter, but it's also an aspirational product that the people do aspire to, want a much better home and improve their surroundings. Key things about real estate are what you find here. Very high involvement category, likely the second or the third most important decision that most people will make in the course of a lifetime, right? And the reason why it is such a high involvement category is also because there's a significant financial overlay. So for most people, buying a home means spending about 7 times of the annual income. And we don't think there are too many other categories which come remotely close, barring probably the big fat Indian wedding. But otherwise, there's no other category which comes remotely close to the sheer outlay that a real estate transaction entails. It's also a low frequency category, by which I mean you might end up buying a home 2 or 3 times in the course of your lifetime. Even if you're renting, it's once in a year, once in a alternate year kind of transactions. So a lot of the rules that govern high frequency or moderate frequency categories don't really apply to real estate. The rules of the game are slightly different by virtue of it being a low frequency category. Outside of this, we'll speak a bit more as we go along. Complex decision making. It's not so easy to buy a house. A buyer has to go through a number of steps before he or she is able to zero down on a house. And the other unique part of real estate, at least when you buy a new home from a developer, doesn't apply to resale, is again, there are not too many categories which exhibit this. When you're buying a new home, you're buying an unfinished good. So you're buying a house which will be delivered many years down the line, a few years down the line, and there are not too many categories which have this kind of behavior, right? So I think all of this makes real estate a little different. Market's doing really well, as most of you probably know. Last year was probably the best year in a decade for real estate, all-round performance. Houses doing well, land doing well, commercial real estate doing well. Prices have shot up by about 50%. It's a great time for anybody who is trying to set up a business in real estate. Moving on. Now, these are some of the things which are pain points or friction areas in the category that you need to eliminate if you have to empower people using the digital ecosystem and improve home ownership. Right? Some of these are common with a lot of other industries too, but there are nuances which makes real estate a little different. For example, people buying a home, they worry about transparency in the whole process. There's a fair bit of anxiety on, am I making the decision wrong? Am I buying a lemon? Right? Am I buying a house that will appreciate and be a good investment or not? So these are some of the worries that consumers have as far as the category is concerned. And like many other industries, if you have to make the category better, you will have to remove the friction points. You'll have to make the process of buying a home much more faster. And given that, and we'll talk about it in a while, the process involves a lot of repetitive activities. And you'll have to see how to eliminate some of them. Now, this is what the industry stack looks like, right? So what I've done is, if you see it from a buyer's perspective, broadly the process of buying a home involves 4 major steps. There is the search and discovery bit, the early stage when you firm up a requirement. Right? This is the time when you decide, what does my budget get me? Right? You're also trying to figure out what's available in the market and make a short list of the kind of properties that you want to evaluate more. Next stage typically is the site visit stage. You're physically on the ground, going, meeting properties, talking to builders, talking to owners, and figuring out what you really want. There is then the transaction stage, and typically a bunch of these services come in. There are legal services required then. You require home loans and financing for the house that you're going to buy. And all of these processes have their own friction points. Based on the service you're looking at, it could take a few days to a few weeks before you're able to complete the loop on all of this. And then there's the post-transaction phase. So even after you buy a home, there's a bunch of things you'll need, right? So you're going to need home interiors, painting, plumbing. If you put the house on rent, you're going to need property management services. So it's quite a long process. So depending on the buyer, people look at between 1 month to 8 months between the time they start looking for a home to the time they actually finish the entire transaction, right? And going back to the topic of the day, if you finally have to make the process of buying easier and remove a lot of the friction points, one key task is, how do you shorten the time? What services do you build so that people are able to buy homes faster and eliminate some of the time that all of these processes take? Needless to say, a whole bunch of companies who are working in each of these segments, right? And as far as Magicbricks is concerned, given that we have pivoted now to full stack, we are trying to develop a presence and solve some of the problems that are there in each of these 4 steps. There's another way to slice the industry, which is you don't look at it from a buyer's journey, right? So there are people, and some of these models have worked, some of these models have not worked. Those of you who are interested in knowing what's worked and not worked, please connect with me offline. But for the sake of completeness, I thought I'll cover this as well. So there are some models which are not looking at a buyer's journey being the entire cycle, right? So flipping homes, for example, was an interesting model. So if you're an owner, the model says, don't go through the rigmarole of selling the house. This is the price. If you like the price, you give it to me. right? And then I will worry about refurbishing the house and selling it to somebody else later. There are other models where, like REITs or fractional homes, in which you say if you're looking for a home as an investment purpose, there's no need to buy the entire property, right? Just like equity, you can buy bits and pieces of it, right? So you can participate in the property, whether it's commercial or residential, but you don't need to buy the entire home, and somebody else will manage your asset for you. There are yet other models like co-working and co-living, in which it's not about buying at all. It's converting capex to opex in some sense, right? So you don't buy, you rent, and these models have emerged out of this kind of a thought. And again, just like the previous way of looking at the industry stack, a bunch of players operating in each of these spaces as well. So I'll talk to you about some of the things that Magicbricks is doing to also make this process of buying a home far easier, far more convenient for buyers. So as far as the core platform is concerned, a lot of the problems are already solved. This is the nature of work that we've done. At least for properties which have a longer shelf life, that stay in the market for longer, there's a whole bunch of work that's happened at gathering more information to help solve the problem of transparency and allow for strong decision support to buyers, right? So we've done a whole bunch of work, so our pages are very dense, a lot of information available there. For people who wish to research, compare projects, they will find a lot of content there as well. What you see on the right hand are tools that we've built. For example, this is a pricing engine. One common problem in the market, if you go out, is you would get a different price if you go to the market saying you're an owner, and you'll get a very different price if you go to the same market and say that you're a buyer. So people often ask us, what's the right price in the market? We built this tool to answer that question. So for those of you who haven't used the tool, do give it a spin. For most projects and localities, with a plus minus 5% difference, it's likely to predict a pretty accurate price of what the going rate is. So there's a whole bunch of tools like these that we have put up on the portal as well, and all of this improves the search and discovery parts of the site. Moving on, I told you we're also doing site visits. And some of the things that we've done in this area is we've arranged the logistics part of it, which is we send cabs to people's homes to pick them up and take them to various sites. We have a trained relationship manager who helps iterate so that every visit that you do is closer and closer to the kind of property that you want. And there's a bunch of product and tech work that's gone into a lovely site visit engine that also allows people to take notes and compare the various sites that they're going so that they can decide faster on the kind of property that they actually want. Outside of this, we've also done a bunch of work for the various partners that we work with. Some players approach the market saying brokers are an undesirable part of the real estate chain. We've never seen it that way. We always thought the broker is an important part of the ecosystem. Our efforts have been to professionalize, right, and enable the brokers with tech so that they are able to present themselves better to buyers. So part of the work that we've done is we've thrown a bunch of tools and we've deployed a fair bit of tech to enable brokers to come up the curve. For example, we have put a CRM tool out there for brokers to help them organize their own shops. We have created a tool that enables them to generate lovely content for the listings that they put up. So if you're a broker, for example, and you have just images, and you give those images to that tool, it's an AI-enabled tool, it will throw up a video with narration, right? And a lovely video out of, even if you don't have a video content, using just images and bare bone minimum text, it will throw up a beautiful video for you, right? This is a dialer tool that we've given to brokers so that all the calls they make to buyers can be recorded. It can be used for training purposes. It can be used to enable them to deliver much better buyer experience from their side. Likewise, if you look at the builder segment, we built a whole bunch of tools. Between the work that we do and a company that we acquired for this purpose, you will find a fair bit of gizmo work here, right? Right from doing 3D walkthroughs to showcasing an engine that allows you to book specific flats in a large tower, to physical devices that you find on the developer project if you go to visit them, right? To AR work, VR work. There's a whole bunch of gizmos available here to enable developers to showcase their projects much better. Moving on, I told you we are also doing home loans. We are also doing home interiors. Again, we have used tech to make the experience in these categories much better. So we built a unique bank recommendation engine. We think it's one of its kind, that enables people to figure out very quickly for themselves what's the right bank to take a loan from, what's the maximum loan they'll get, and what's the best rate of interest. You don't need to go asking around. Feed the inputs into the tool will spit out an answer. We think it saves a fair amount of time and a fair amount of iterative effort of buyers in the whole process. Likewise, there's a price calculator that is built for interiors, right? So if you're doing a home interior and you want a quick estimation for what it's likely to cost you, basis what you have in mind, this tool will spit out that basis the design that you have in mind, what is likely to be a ballpark estimate in terms of pricing. So I hope this gives you a gist. So between the kind of work that we're doing in each of these various stages where a buyer goes to buy a home, as well as the collective work of all the startups and companies in this space, I think we've made a fair bit of progress in the last 5 to 10 years to enable home ownership. And it's not just our effort, it's the effort of more than 200, 300 startups who are active in a space which is doing that. Lastly, to conclude, I wanted to wrap up also faster, so if you have questions, we can sort of take it. While we made a lot of progress in the last 5 or 6 years in this space, I think the next 12 months is going to be pretty formative, right? Particularly with the impact of AI that's going to come in our space. We are also a regulated space, so a lot of the actions that governments take will also help improve home ownership. For example, people in India flip homes far less often. Most people in India don't live beyond their third home in the course of a lifetime, right? Whereas this number is far higher in the West. So any steps from the government to reduce transaction costs, for example, like what happened in Maharashtra, is likely to make people buy and sell far, far more often and therefore get visibility and liquidity into the market. Likewise, any moves to give title insurance through title guarantees is likely to remove a lot of anxiety out of the process. So all said and done, between the work that companies like us and the various startups in this space and the work that they're doing, and hopefully support from various government policies as well, I think we are looking forward to further improving the convenience, reducing the anxieties, and helping people get to their homes much faster. Thank you so much.